So I think something that it should be considered a tale of our time is something that one has stood up to the test of time, something that has proven that it was influential the time that it was released, and that is still influential today. I think it's also important that when it was released, whether it was like written or published or released onto theaters, that it changed its medium in some way. I think that's what qualifies something as a tale of our time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read or watch. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and I'm having having a little bit of a hard time with my voice today, I guess. So it's good that I'm joined by my good friend, Tyler Golec. Hey, Tyler.
Hello.
It's a shame. It worked really well the first time that we tried this. And then now, the second time, I got a frog in my throat. So that's cool. That's fun.
How it works.
How are you today? Tonight?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Yeah.
Yes, tonight.
Yeah. So,
Stayed awake.
well, is there anything you want to say to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Tyler Golec. I am 32. I am an aspiring writer.
Hmm.
I guess you can find my stuff at tylergolecswriting.com.
Hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah. And actually, we met in Taiwan.
Yes, I lived in Taiwan for 5 years as a teaching, studying Chinese and writing.
Now, the movie, of course, that you want to talk about today is Star
Is
Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yep.
And that's directed by George Lucas. Yeah, I guess. Should we, I feel like you probably have a lot of, opinions about it. So should we just get started with the summary?
Yeah. So Star Wars: A New Hope, Episode 4. Let's get into it. It starts out with the Empire's intercepting the Rebel ship, where Princess Leia and the plans for the Death Star are housed. And we see C-3PO and R2-D2 escape. So the droids, they crash landed on Tatooine and they were picked up by Jawas. And
Oh.
then they were sold to Luke's stepfather, Owen Lars, where we get the beginning of our hero's journey in Episode 4, where we meet Luke Skywalker and his rather like normal life on Tatooine.
Mm.
And from there, the droids are kind of the initiators. Like you have R2-D2 who escapes, and Luke has to pursue him. And it's thankful that Luke does because the stormtroopers of the Empire are coming after the droids. And this whole thing initiates Luke meeting Obi-Wan, who starts telling him about the Force and Jedi and his father. Obi-Wan first is like, I need your help, Luke. I trained your father. He was a Jedi, etc., etc. But Luke
Mm-hmm.
refuses the hero's call, quote unquote, and he returns to his family who have been killed by the stormtroopers.
Bummer. Huge
Um,
bummer.
yep, real awful scene. That's where we see like the charred and bodies and stuff. It's
Oh my God, I
1977.
forgot. Wow. I didn't know it was so graphic. I should watch this again.
Yep, and then yep, he has no choice then but to go with Obi-Wan, and then that kicks things off, and they meet Han Solo. They have the escape with the plans. They try to return to Alderaan, which is where they're trying to take the plans, but the Death Star,
Mm.
which has Princess Leia, has blown up Alderaan, and then because the Millennium Falcon, which has Han Solo and everyone on it, is getting close to the Death Star,
Mm.
they get captured there, and that leads into the ordeal of the story
Oh,
where they're trying to find their way through the Death Star, get the ship out, and ultimately Obi-Wan has to confront Darth Vader, who was his former apprentice.
yeah,
And that's
that's
where they
your.
have the battle.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
That's our first clue
Yep.
that perhaps there's more to Darth Vader than we thought.
Right.
Something dad-like even. So, wow, I forgot that
Yep.
happened in the first one.
So then that happens. Obi-Wan dies,
Uh-huh.
and to overcome it, they have the attack on the Death Star with the X-wing squadron that ultimately leads to the proton Luke trusting in the Force and the proton torpedo taking out the Death Star
Mm-hmm.
and the famous explosion scene.
Right.
But
And then
yeah,
that's just like where it ends?
yeah, it's the first of the trilogy. They have the like reward ceremony, where
Um,
like they get the medals. I think like R2 got shot up in the chase, and R2's revealed to be like fine and fixed up. So it's like this happy feel good ending,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which leads into the more sad, or more like dark episode 5.
Yeah. We only lose one person in episode 4.
Right. Yep.
So,
Obi-Wan.
yeah, well, sorry. Someone's got to die for if we want to have
Yep.
it,
They
if we
gotta
want
have
to.
the proper ordeal.
Right. If somebody's going to start on a hero's journey, an old man has to die. Your mentor is going to have to die
Right.
in your place. That's the way it always works. These are the rules. We're not the writers of them. We're simply the consumers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I
Yeah. And
and I think in like the sake of Star Wars, having something like the hero's journey, which is,
hmm.
I mean, generally well accepted, and kind of it just works as a story arc.
Yeah.
It kind of helps the I guess the viewer accept the expanded universe of such a vast
Hmm.
sci-fi concept as Star Wars,
Yeah.
because the plot itself isn't technically that complicated, just the characters in the world.
hmm The world especially. Because that's what makes me
Yes.
nervous. Is like I understand the characters, right? Like Princess Leia.
Yeah.
Okay, it's in the name. She's cool. She works with the rebels. Han Solo is like the fast talking, shooting, roguey guy with a heart of gold. And Luke is gonna be the hero. He's gonna turn into a Jedi, which are like space wizards. And
Right.
like you have your helpful robot
Space wizards
friends.
with swords.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I that might be controversial, but I heard somebody one time describe the Jedi as space wizards, and since I've heard that, I can't unhear it. You know, because it's like, oh, you use the
I mean, it's
magical
not
force.
untrue.
It's they're cool. It's a cool order, but that's how
Yeah.
I like rationalize
It's
everybody
not
here.
insulting.
Okay, I'm worried it is, but here we are. This is the
Yeah.
world that we live in. So
I don't know. Wizards are cool. Space is cool.
yeah, why? Like, I think those are both cool things. So, but yeah, the world itself of Star Wars is quite complex, and the way that those things
Mhm.
all like interact. So let's start with, what was your first experience with this
Yeah.
story? It was
So
from 1977, so obviously you and I didn't see it the first
mhm.
time in theaters.
Yeah. So it was
Uh,
14 years before I was born. But growing up, I know, like, I think my dad introduced us to it. I remember going to like the movie
mhm,
theaters and picking out a Star Wars movie was like was per tradition.
mhm.
Like it was always just going through which one do we choose.
The
Like I
movie
barely
theater, or
remember
like,
which one I saw. Oh, when we oh the movie rental place like Blockbuster once upon a
oh yeah,
time
yeah. Well, because they
in the
do have
90s.
reruns, you know. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Blockbuster, goodness. But they do have reruns, so because that's where I saw. Oh
Mhm.
no. Oh no, it was a second trilogy. So never mind. That's where I was getting confused. But they did have
And the
reruns
prequels.
before that. Yeah. For like episodes one,
Oh
two,
yeah.
three. They put the old movies back in theaters for a short time. So I didn't know if that was how
Hmm.
you saw it.
Yeah, not for the first time.
Hmm. What did you think about it the first time that you saw it? Because you were a kid then at that
Um,
time.
yeah, I mean it's like such an imaginary, such an out there story.
Hmm.
Um, but I just like I loved it. I love the imagination. I love the heroes. I love Luke Skywalker. It's probably like the most memorable like hero of my childhood.
Mm.
Probably more so than any like comic book hero or anything.
Yeah.
Was probably like Luke Skywalker from Star Wars.
He's cool.
You know.
He's a cool, like, average kid turned insanely
Hmm.
powerful space Jedi. I shouldn't say space Jedi, just Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, like I got confused between calling them space wizards before. So, but yeah. It's a good story. I remember I really liked the first
Mhm.
one too when I first saw it, but I do not remember when I first saw it. I just remember watching it with my parents because, like you, they really loved it, and so that was how I
Mhm.
experienced it. So then I guess since Luke Skywalker was really important to you, can you tell us more about like why this first movie especially was so meaningful to you? Was it because that's where like you were introduced to him as a character, or was it more about like things that happened in the narrative?
Yeah, I think, well, the first movie does the best of like self-containing, I think, a hero's journey in and of itself.
Mm,
And it does a really good job of introducing all the entire cast, but particularly like Luke Skywalker
hmm.
as like kind of his values, like what are his strengths, his weaknesses, and like everything he has to overcome.
Yeah.
Like even by the end of the first, like he's barely uses the Force by the end of the first movie, but you already feel like he's kind of overcome quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I just think it's kind of like I don't know. I always appreciated his journey
Yeah.
compared to like other heroes and other stories.
Yeah. It's a very
But,
it's a very clear cut journey, I guess is what we could say about that. I was actually going to ask,
mhm.
you keep mentioning the phrase the hero's journey. Do you think you could define what that is for listeners?
Right. So, as clear as anything, it would probably be Joseph Campbell's
Mm,
hero's journey breakdown, where he kind of created like the monolith or the monomyth, where it like the basic plot that most mythology or most heroes in mythology, their stories follow, like
hmm.
the call to adventure, refusal of the call, supernatural aid, etc., etc., all the way to like the important things like the ordeal, which is the moment where like things don't go as planned.
The big bad thing that
Something is
happens.
lost, which in Star Wars is Obi-Wan Kenobi's death,
Hmm.
and then there's like the recovery from it, which overall is a simple plot, but it works well and
Yeah.
compelling, like a inspiring character.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a story blueprint that a lot of stories fall into, or like one of those patterns that
Right.
you can see reflected across many different narratives. I think
Hmm.
you people might have seen the graphic, which compares the stories of Harry Potter, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, and the ways in
Right.
which they're similar. And that would be because a lot of stories follow that similar template. And Star Wars
Hmm.
is the first one, Episode 4, is a really clear example of it. You can see all of those absolutely non-ambiguously, I guess is the way that I'm trying to
Hmm.
say that. But
Oh yeah,
it's
episode
fun.
4, I think you can find a one-to-one.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene for every single part.
And I guess
Hmm.
it works really well too because it did set up the rest of the series to kind of both embrace that format and kind of go bigger,
Hmm.
right? Like they get it out of the
Right.
way in that sense.
And
Um,
allow then like future characters to break the mold, do their own
yeah.
thing.
So I guess for us to kind of like continue on and go bigger, why do you think that
Hmm.
Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4, is a tale of our time? Why do you think it deserves that medal, if I had
All
one?
right. So I guess based on the definition I gave at the beginning of this,
Hmm.
one, we're talking about it, and it's, let's do some quick math, 40,
40.
47 years later,
Yeah, yeah.
46 years later. Yeah, 47 years later,
Hmm.
and we're having a conversation about it. And it was a movie that came out before I was even born.
Hmm.
And like, well, what is it? This past week, Ahsoka,
Oh, yeah.
like the first two episodes of Ahsoka came out, and I
Hmm.
was up watching those.
Hmm.
Um, so to say something like that, it still has such an important impact on our society, on me,
Hmm.
like on other people like me, because I know I was in like a watch party online with
Yeah.
I think 10,000 other people watching it.
Really? Ahsoka?
So yeah. So clearly it's still like impactful today.
Hmm.
And I think when it came out in 1977, it really, like, one, it opened up sci-fi to like the mainstream, I think. Because you
Hmm.
kind of like Star Trek predated it,
Yeah.
but I think just the accessibility of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think part of that's the hero's journey and just the simplicity of the first episode even
Hmm.
made it like a lot of people could watch it and digest the sci-fi. Be
Well,
like, you know what? Maybe spaceships are cool.
yeah.
Maybe I want to learn more about this.
And I guess compared to, like, if we were to compare it to Star Trek, I think perhaps
Hmm.
talking about it as like making it more accessible. Star Trek is like a long running series. And while it is episodic,
Right.
like that could be really intimidating to some people. While like
Hmm.
Star Wars, when it came out, is like it's a one and done movie at that time. It turned
Right.
into a series, right? But it's like, oh, you just go to the theater, and then once you've watched
Hmm.
it, you did it. It's done.
Yeah, you know everything. Yeah.
right. And especially at that time, like you know everything we know. So that is a lot more approachable for some people. Like, because TV is like questionably free, but that kind of ease of watch and understanding, I think, is really important when we consider like what defines accessibility, I guess is what I'm getting at. So that is a really interesting point. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but if you could give Star Wars: A New Hope a single one-phrase subtitle of your own making, what would it be? Kind of close it up.
It's probably Star Wars. I guess New Hope is the current subtitle.
Yeah. So we could start with like A New Hope, and then you put your subtitle after that.
Star Wars: A New Hope. I guess welcome to Sci-Fi.
Welcome to Sci-Fi.
Hope you never leave.
Never leave. Yeah, it's a good introduction. And it'll keep you there. If you're really into the lore, you could just stay in Star Wars forever.
Oh yeah. It was my introduction to sci-fi. I still love sci-fi and I still love Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, and there's still a lot to go consume. Well, thank you for joining me today, Tyler.
Of course. No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone else for listening and for joining us on Radio Taiwan International. This has been Tales of Our Time. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest, Tyler Golec. And I hope that you enjoyed learning about, or at least discussing, I think most people probably do know a little bit about it, but learning about Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Welcome to Sci-Fi, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.